Detroit was ready. The door was not. A 20-year-old Soviet star, Sergei Fedorov, stood in a quiet hallway listening for footsteps that could end everything.
I thought at that time I'm never going to see my parents again.
Inside, Red Wings staff whispered into phones. One delay would erase years of planning.
My phone. Some guy from the State Department, you know the whereabouts of Sergei Fedorov. Sergei basically said, yes.
If he stayed, his life was controlled. If he ran, his family would pay the price. This was the last moment his life still belonged to someone else.
A little bit scary, a little bit exciting. Probably more exciting than scary because I'm not going to be starving to death here.
Sergei Fedorov moved through the hallway with deliberate control, each step measured, knowing that panic would give him away. In another part of the building, Detroit Red Wings staff were scattered. If the timing slipped, if the wrong person noticed, this entire plan collapsed. Only months earlier, none of this felt real. Years later, Detroit would call this theft. That night, it felt like survival. Fedorov was still inside the Soviet system, still watched, still documented, still told where to be and when. He was a prized asset, but also a possession. His calls were monitored, and even the idea of leaving the country was treated like a crime. For the Soviet team, losing Fedorov would mean losing face on the world stage. The Red Wings made contact without leaving a trail, not with a press release or a contract waved in the air, but with whispers. Reporter Keith Gaves secretly passed him a team guide with a letter hidden inside. Reading it meant crossing a line you couldn't step back over. Fedorov didn't say yes right away. He couldn't. It meant risking what might happen to his parents and his younger brother back home. It meant becoming something dangerous in the eyes of people who once praised him. He waited, finishing his military service while watching for an opening. The Goodwill Games in Portland provided the opening. It was one of the rare moments when the system loosened its grip just enough to slip through. The game was against the USA on July 22, 1990. Fedorov had scored in the game, but the only number that mattered now was the number on the limo door. The plan was simple because it had to be. No bags, no hesitation, no second thoughts. Back in the hallway, Fedorov reached the corner. His heart was pounding now. He saw the signal, the paper, the door behind him stayed closed. For a brief moment, everything held still. Then the elevator opened. Out stepped his roommate, Valery Zelapukin.
When everybody went up, I told my roommate I'm going to Detroit.
Fedorov embraced his friend and pressed the saved rubles into his hand. Money meant as protection and goodbye. He risked the plan for this. Then Fedorov turned and walked out the back door. The limo was waiting. The door closed. The city slid by in silence. No one spoke. The airport lights appeared faster than expected. Somewhere behind them, someone was starting to realize what had happened. The private jet door shut with a dull sound that felt heavier than it should. Engine started. The plane moved. Only then did Fedorov allow himself to sit back. There was no cheering, no relief, just silence. As the plane took off, one thought kept repeating louder than the engines. What did I just do to my family? Freedom didn't feel like freedom yet. It felt like waiting for consequences. Hours later, the news broke. Soviet officials admitted he was gone. The coach was Viktor Tikhonov. He claimed that Fedorov's sudden departure was not an ordinary action and warned that any other Soviet player trying to follow would face terrible punishments.
And I know I can play a little bit of hockey, so I was willing to take some risk and some danger.
Back home, his parents had no warning, no explanation, just the sudden absence of their son. In Detroit, the contract was signed. Cameras flashed, headlines were written. To the outside world, this looked like a victory. Inside, it felt nothing like winning. The escape was over. What came next was silence, distance, and the work of becoming someone else. When Fedorov arrived in Detroit in the summer of 1990, the reality set in immediately. He was alone in a city where nothing sounded familiar. Detroit signed him to a 5-year, $3.5 million deal. It was the most complex and risky international commitment the franchise had ever made. But they were speaking a language he didn't understand, sitting in an empty apartment thousands of miles from the life he left behind. But the first time he skated in practice, the uncertainty stopped mattering. Steve Yzerman watched how fast he reached top speed. Mark Howe saw how difficult it was to knock him off balance. Head coach Brian Murray realized he was looking at movement you couldn't teach. What he needed help with was everything else. Sean Burr became his road roommate and guide. Burr handled the small things, ordering food, navigating hotels, and translating jokes. There were misunderstandings at first, including one moment when Fedorov earnestly told him, "I need love," only for everyone to realize he was asking for new hockey gloves. Other teammates stepped in. Yzerman, Probert, Koser, Zombo. They included him without making a show of it. Rides, meals, locker room chatter. Slowly, the space stopped feeling foreign. On the ice, the adjustment came faster. In his first NHL game, Fedorov scored on instinct. By the end of his rookie season, he had 31 goals and 79 points and earned a place on the NHL All-Rookie team. For the first time, success was his alone. No handlers, no permission. The transformation was obvious, but with that came a new level of attention. By the early 90s, Sergei Fedorov was no longer adjusting to the NHL. Every shift created problems that teams had no answer for. Then the numbers caught up. The 1993-94 season changed how the league talked about him. He finished with 56 goals and 120 points while handling shutdown assignments. His 120 points placed him second in the league that year, finishing 10 points behind Wayne Gretzky. Critically, he also led the NHL in plus-minus with a rating of plus 48. By the end of the year, the awards followed. Hart Trophy, Lester B. Pearson Award, and Frank J. Selke Trophy. It forced the league to rethink what a complete forward looked like. He dominated offensively while shutting down the best players in the league. No matter how teams tried to contain him, the problem only changed form. Take away his scoring, and he controlled the game. Lean on him physically, and he skated away from it. Wayne Gretzky noticed. After facing Detroit that season, Gretzky said he had never seen a player dominate a game the way Fedorov did. Not in stretches, but game to game. For a player who once needed approval to leave his hotel room, controlling entire games felt surreal. Inside Detroit's locker room, the view was simpler. Steve Yzerman called him the most talented player he had ever played with. Scotty Bowman trusted him enough to move him wherever the team needed help. That trust led to one of the most debated decisions of Fedorov's career. Bowman began using him on defense. Over the next 2 months, Fedorov played 7 games on the blue line. The move was risky, but during that stretch, Detroit defended better, won games, and the criticism faded quickly. Why push an elite forward into a heavier role? The answer was leverage. From defense, Fedorov could slow the game, start breakouts, and neutralize forechecks with speed alone. He didn't just survive the role, he handled it cleanly. Detroit won games during those stretches, and Bowman never apologized for it. It was another reminder that Fedorov was no longer fitting into systems. He was bending them. Some blamed the position switch when his scoring dipped slightly. Others blamed distractions. None of that changed how the coaching staff viewed him. He was carrying more responsibility, not less. At the same time, the scrutiny around him grew louder. Once Nike stepped in, attention followed him. The white skates became a visual marker. Away from the rink, interest shifted to his personal life, especially his relationship with Anna Kournikova. Suddenly, hockey shows weren't just breaking down shifts and matchups. Sports radio debated focus. Every scoring dip became a topic, but the noise stayed. Then the business side caught up. After the 1997 Stanley Cup, contract talks stalled. The season moved on without him. In February 1998, Carolina forced the issue with a massive offer sheet. The $38 million 6-year offer included a staggering $14 million bonus for the final season. Detroit matched the entire offer just 3 days before the deadline. When Fedorov returned, the atmosphere had changed. For the first time in his career in Detroit, he heard boos when he touched the puck, and for a player who had risked everything to choose his own future, being questioned hurt in a different way. Detroit won another Stanley Cup that spring. Fedorov contributed when it mattered, but something had shifted. The player trusted to handle any role on the ice now carried questions that followed him everywhere else. What didn't change was effectiveness. An MVP season, multiple Selke trophies, Stanley Cups. The problem was never his performance. It was how the world reacted when he stopped fitting the story they wanted. Every contract became a headline. Every decision turned into a debate. When things went right, it was expected. When anything went wrong, it landed on him. The isolation Sergei Fedorov felt when he first arrived had been replaced by something revolutionary. Scotty Bowman united him with Slava Fedosov, Igor Larionov, Vladimir Konstantinov, and Vyacheslav Kozlov to form the Russian Five, a unit that played the game in a way the league had never seen. While the rest of the league relied on dumping the puck and grinding in corners, Fedorov and his countrymen moved in perfect rhythm, making passes through lanes that didn't seem to exist until they created them. The most famous example came during the 1996 playoffs, where they completed a complex, dizzying cycle play that resulted in a goal against the St. Louis Blues, a play Bowman later called the perfect shift. That brilliance helped deliver 3 Stanley Cups to Detroit, but Fedorov's leadership often looked different than what fans expected. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room or the captain wearing the C. Instead, he led with a quiet, undeniable dominance that anchored the team for over a decade. In the summer of 2003, the relationship between Fedorov and the Red Wings finally fractured. After 13 seasons, contract disputes and a desire for a new challenge led him to sign with the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim. The exit was painful. For years, Detroit fans argued about the departure, feeling a mix of betrayal and loss. The breakup said more about expectations than effort. By the time he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2015, the bitterness had faded, replaced by the undeniable realization that the league had witnessed a once-in-a-lifetime talent. The boos from 1998 were gone, replaced by a deep appreciation and love for the superstar who paved the way for every Russian player who followed. He wasn't loved because he was perfect. He was loved because everything he did mattered. And then came the final twist in the story, the one that feels almost impossible considering where it began. After retiring, Fedorov didn't stay in the comfort of North America. He returned to Russia, not as a defector, but as the head coach of CSKA Moscow, the iconic army team he once had to flee. The same system he escaped was now looking to him for direction. He installed the NHL blueprint back home, leading CSKA to back-to-back Gagarin Cups. It brings his journey to a complete circle. The 20-year-old who walked through a hotel hallway in fear had grown into a man who could walk back into Moscow on his own terms. The system that once controlled him now had to adapt to him. Did freedom give him everything he dreamed of? Perhaps not every day was perfect, but looking at the legacy he built, it's clear that the escape didn't just save his career. It allowed him to reshape the entire hockey world in his image. If you want more stories about the legends who defined the game, hit subscribe right now. I can't do this alone. And if you want to support the channel directly, the join button is waiting for you. Don't make me spell it out like you're some spare parts who can't find a button on the screen. Figure it out.